Shortly after the formation of Madison County in 1806, Jeremiah Whipple of Cazenovia was appointed to the role of sheriff. The Board of Supervisors appointed sheriffs annually until 1829 when Pardon Bernard became the first elected sheriff of Madison County. Most sheriffs served one term in the role before moving on.
The sheriff is an elected position, so to get somebody in there that has a lot of law enforcement experience, that's a benefit. It's a odd position in law enforcement in that the people choose who it is, like a police chief takes a test and gets promoted. The sheriff is unique across all 52 counties, 62 counties in the state, 59 of them are elected, and that the people choose who their top law enforcement officer is going to be in the county.
The sheriff's office moved the county seat from Cazenovia to Morrisville in 1817 and then from Morrisville to Wamsville in 1910. One of the more well-known sheriffs of the 19th century was Sheriff William Bonney. Bonney is well known for run-ins with the infamous Loomis gang.
The most audacious act ever committed in Madison County was the burning of the courthouse, that beautiful 1849 courthouse, and you can see it right here. Nice architecture, very, very lovely courthouse. And all of a sudden in 1864, it was around October 11th, I was sheriff at that time, and my residence was right next door on this side of it. And it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden I hear voices out in the street, fire, fire. I got the window up and I looked out, and people are running up the street from down on the flats, and they're bringing their buckets with them. And I looked at the courthouse, and yes, there were flames coming out of the windows. What they found was that the hoses had been cut. Someone had come in this engine house, and the hoses would be hung from the tower in the back to dry. And somebody had come in and slashed the hoses, so that the pumper and the firemen and the hose were useless, and the courthouse burned to the ground. So the story of the courthouse over there, it's ironic because we think the Loomises did it. The Loomises were under the impression that there were indictments in the courthouse against them. So most people in Morrisville feel that the Loomises burned the courthouse to destroy the indictments. Well, the courthouse burned, but the indictments were actually in that building right next door, which is the county clerk's office.
Following the demise of the Loomis gang, the Madison County Sheriff's Office performed their duties admirably and without much excitement until Sheriff Leander Burroughs was removed from office by New York State Governor David B. Hill in 1890. Burroughs took office in 1888 and served the role without issue until April of 1890, when charges of malfeasance related to taxes and counting money were levied against him by Charles E. Ramick, a member of the County Board of Supervisors from the town of Lenox. After reading the charges and evidence, Governor Hill determined that Burroughs filed false and fraudulent charges with intent to cheat and defraud Madison County, which led to his removal from office. No criminal charges were ever brought against Burroughs. A dark cloud seemed to settle over the sheriff's office in the early 20th century with the death of 2 Madison County peace officers in the line of duty. In April of 1907, Deputy Michael Mooney of Hamilton was shot in the shoulder and back while attempting to make an arrest. While he survived initially, his condition worsened and Mooney died from complications from the gunshot wounds in November of 1913. In April of 1914, Game Warden Samuel Taylor of Madison was traveling along the Mohawk River with another game warden when they heard gunshots. Upon confronting poachers, Taylor was shot in the chest and abdomen. He was rushed to Oneida County Hospital where he succumbed to his wounds. The Roaring Twenties and women being granted the right to vote brought many changes to Madison County. That decade saw the appointment of the first female to the sheriff's office, Carrie Cornell, in 1921. Prior to her role as deputy, Cornell served as the Madison County probation officer and police matron starting in January of 1915. Cornell was appointed as special deputy and continued to serve as a probation officer as well as her new duties. Cornell was considered one of the best probation officers in the area. In 1949, at age 70, she retired and the county filled her role with 2.5 people. Another woman to make history in the Madison County Sheriff's Office was Amy Picorni in 1980. Picorni served as the first female road patrol deputy. She doesn't see herself as a trailblazer, she just liked to help people.
When you got a rookie guy starting, he only had to prove himself once and boom, word spread. For me, They didn't believe it until they saw it.
Pokorny goes on to say that all of the officers were a family. It is a brotherhood. Pokorny served with the sheriff's office from 1978 until she retired from full-time duty in 2000. After that, she continued to serve part-time on the welfare fraud unit until 2010. Many women followed her footsteps over the years, and in 2020, Madison County Sheriff's Office promoted its first ever female lieutenant, Julie Nessman.
So we were still pretty disproportionate compared to the males, but I was the first female into the Verona Fire Department, and I was the first female officer hired in the city of Sherrill. So I think I was part of a trend. Things were changing at that point. I had to work hard. They didn't need a quota. They didn't need so many females. They didn't need this. If you earned your right to be there, you stayed. And when I got here, I think men and women in law enforcement complement each other so well because we have different perspectives. And how my partners, when I was on the road patrol and even in investigations, we bring different opinions and we just bring maybe a different skill set. But when we come together and when you have good partners or deputies that you're clicking with, we just complement each other. And I love my work. I love being a deputy. I love being an investigator. And I was focused on my work. And I think that hurdles, they were my own, and I proved through my work and through my work ethic that I had earned the right to be a leader here.
Another historical moment for Madison County was the election of Sheriff Alan Riley in 2009. He was the second African-American sheriff elected in New York State and the first in Central New York. Riley ran for the position after serving with the New York State Police for 27 years. He served as Madison County Sheriff until June of 2017, when he stepped down to accept the role of chairman of the New York State Commission of Correction.
Being from Madison County, I knew a lot of people. And like I said, it's something I've always talked about doing, being the sheriff. And when I ran, a lot of people told me that, you're not going to be elected sheriff being of color. That's just, a given. And it really made me work harder to prove that I could be. And when I did run, a lot of people said, well, it's about time you did run. You've been mentioning this for years, so you're going to run. So I said, yes. I had a lot of help from a lot of people. I felt that the training that I had was far more, into depth in law enforcement and management experience, which helped a lot. The correction part was something I had to learn. But I think overall, the community accepted me. I know we did a lot of things. I had community backing behind me.
Throughout the years, technological advances have changed how the Madison County Sheriff's Office operates.
We didn't have a lot of the equipment that they have today. We didn't have radios and telephones. We had a telegraph, and that's how we kept in touch around the county. We had a weekly newspaper. We had U.S. mail. So nothing was very current. When something happened, it took a while for the sheriff here in Madison County and in Morrisville to find out.
The biggest changes to the office have come over the past 40 years. Change is not a bad thing. Sometimes it is necessary.
So you can't change what happened in the past. Say, okay, I'm only going to change from here to the future to make sure it doesn't happen again, or maybe our policies need to be changed, or maybe the actions of the training of the officers have to be changed.
Prior to 1990, the Madison County Sheriff's deputies did it all. There were not separate patrol officers or investigators or corrections officers or even 911 dispatchers.
Again, we were like jack of all trades. We had to do everything. We had to work in the jail, we did civil work, we did road patrol work. Wherever we were needed is what we did.
When the road patrol began, it was only about 6 cars. Now in 2021, it is 49. At times, there was only 1 deputy on the road and no one overnight.
Well, when it first started, there was no such thing as a full-time road patrol in a marked police vehicle. And Sheriff Spaulding himself, he lived in Munnsville, I lived in Clockville at the time, and we did a lot of blood relays. The main blood bank is located in Onondaga County in Syracuse. When the city of Oneida would need blood at their hospital, an emergency, or any of the Utica hospitals, or Norwich hospitals in Utica, or Shenango County down in Norwich, they would contact us and they'd set the blood relay up. Onondaga County Sheriff's deputies would take it to the county line in Chittenango. We'd pick it up there and transfer it down to Oneida County line on Route 5 or the Shenango County line. And that's how we transferred the blood to get it somewhere quickly.
The sheriff's office had 2 phones, and these were the old-fashioned phones that you picked up with a cord. The sheriff's office had 2. We had Hamilton PDs, we had Cas PDs, and we had Chittenango PDs. We took the calls for all of them, and then hit the mic to dispatch to your car or whatever that was going on. Back then, on a good day, top was 3 cars total for the entire county, and it was split north, southeast, and southwest. So, and that's how they handled it. They didn't do closest car concept. It was whoever had that zone had to go.
The original jail was 3 stories, and every deputy started their service in the jail.
So we're talking stairs, there's no elevators or anything back in those days. And remember, the top floor had 6 cells on the south side was for females, which we didn't have many females back in those days. But if we did have a female inmate, it tied up 6 cells. Plus, the cook was always a female lady. And when we had a female inmate, she had to stay at the jail that night. She had to sleep upstairs in the bedroom of the old residence. Wow. Because if we had female inmates, we had to have a matron there. So the cook doubled as a matron also back in those days.
We had these great big keys, and what you had to do, the male deputies, they had a group right in the jail that stayed in the jail behind that locked door. As a general rule, the female did the dispatching for the cars and the PDs. Every 15 minutes, you had these great big log books. You had to write down the time, enter, go physically check each cell, log it, and back out. And there were 3 floors. And the men's side had a catwalk on the 1st and 2nd floors. The females were housed on the 3rd floor south side, and there was no catwalk. So I just walked a little farther away from their cells because they would try to get you. The processing was down in the basement inside the jail where they processed the inmates. And then the outer part, you walked in, it was your dispatching and so on. Then you had a kitchen. The female deputy on the midnight shift, I worked that when I was part-time, had to cook breakfast for all the inmates. The males didn't have to, the females had to. So I was not a good cook, so I only got asked to do that a couple times after that. They didn't do it, so.
In 1986, Sheriff Ryan oversaw the building of the new jail.
We were in the process of either renovating our old jail here or building the new one. And it was quite a task. The county formed a task force to look into this. They sent some of us out to Boulder, Colorado, out to the National Institute of Corrections to learn a little bit about corrections and what it was all about, and the jail, and we wanted to expand the number of cells because we only had 48 to begin with. The thing that really bothered me about that is, of course, State Commission of Correction come in, and one thing that you had to have was natural light coming into a cell. Like the old jail, come into a catwalk, but the new jail had to have the natural light coming in. And we had an inmate escape. He was a federal inmate, very dangerous. And he got through that 6.5-inch window. He soaped himself up with soap and slid it through that. We didn't have razor wire at that time because we asked for razor wire around the facility and a fence when we first built the new facility, and the Board of Supervisors at that time wouldn't go for that, for the expense of it. But after this escape, thank God we got him that night. We got him in Utica. And, but after that, the razor wire went up in a hurry.
In the 1990s, the sheriff's office grew and the roles of deputies became more defined. The 911 dispatch center was created in the early 2000s, and computers were becoming a vital part of law enforcement.
When I came on board, I know that we had a lot of old equipment, outdated equipment that would not allow us to do our job. We had old vehicles, just a lot of, we needed to update. That's all there was to it. And we were so far behind the times as far as technology, vehicles, uniform wearing, military style. So I really worked hard at updating that to get, the guys to feel, proud of themselves and to kind of have some kind of uniform presence.
All of our, the technological advances, like we have a computer crimes unit now. That was not even heard of. I may have had a cell phone when I started, but I remember being on the road patrol and getting my first text message from one of the other deputies, and I didn't know what my phone was doing. And isn't that so funny? That is such a tool for us now. The communication back and forth all the time is text messaging. And I just remember, I don't know what this is. We did a lot of paper writing, tickets, writing. And if you had, we used to call them a case of the uns. And, people who didn't have their vehicle registered or inspected, or maybe they're unlicensed, and you'd have several tickets and you were writing them all by hand. I remember the first issue I had once we had gone to electronic tickets that printed out in the car. And my printer wasn't working, and I had stopped a gentleman on Route 20 for speeding, and that poor man, I even felt bad at the end because it took me so long to get my printer working because I was having so many computer issues in the car.
The Madison County Sheriff's Office has always been about serving the people. As time went on, more and more community programs and services have been created.
The county did what was called Project Identichild. And myself, lieutenant, and another deputy, the three of us, went to every school in Madison County and did one fingerprint card of children, grades K through 6, or I think it was 6, and then any high school that wanted it. And the card was for the parent to keep on hand because children were disappearing, and it was for identity purposes. But the kids are great. That was my favorite thing to do. And I want to say we were assigned to that almost 6 months, I think, by the time we did everyone. And their curiosity and they're trying to see what you're doing and the questions they asked, I loved it.
I brought DARE programs into Madison County. I brought triad programs where we interacted with the senior citizens, did classes for senior citizens, and we created a program at Christmas time where we worked with the Madison County Youth Board, and I was on the youth board for a long time, and worked with the youth board to give away incentives to students who weren't the best, weren't the worst in class, but don't get recognized at all. And there's a lot of those that get lost in the schools. But they may have a parent who has had issues, and they were going to school and taking care of their siblings and doing all sorts of work, and only getting C's or B's, but they had a lot on their plate. And so we had a program where we recognized those students as much as we could.
We're doing a bike rodeo in Canastota. We have Project Lifesaver, where people with dementia, Alzheimer's, things like that, a child with autism, we can put a monitor on them. We can track them within like a 5-mile radius of their house with an antenna. We give away bicycle helmets. Our jail programs alone it's about 2 pages in everything that we offer the inmates to try to get them not only to fulfill their requirement to the courts, but to get them rehabilitated and get them back on track. Our union does shop with the sheriff also, so I I allow them to grow beards, a well-kept beard on the road patrol in the jail, and they raise money for children that need some help during Christmas, and they bring them to the store and they get to shop.
In 2003, Madison County created the Madison County Child Advocacy Center that is a branch of the Sheriff's Office which assists children who are sexually abused in our community.
Let's start in the 90s when we had no Child Advocacy Center in Madison County. In fact, hardly anybody did. But it was always on a number of our wish lists of county people that work with in this field of child abuse, that we would have one someday. So in 2002, the Sheriff's Department, along with the Sheriff's Office, I should say, along with the Department of Social Services, applied for a grant from the state Office of Children and Family Services to start a team back then. It wasn't a facility then, it was just a team.
That program does amazing work. The Children's Advocacy Center, they are typically our youngest victims, and they have been victimized, most of those cases, by adults. And that program helps victims of sexual abuse get the services or treatment or caring that they need, but that carries on to families.
Our sense of purpose in our program is deep, because we see how families respond to what we have to offer, and it's reassuring to us that we're not adding system trauma to the trauma they're already experiencing by having the Child Advocacy Center.
The Madison County Sheriff's Office continues to transform. In 2021, the office and the Madison County Board of Supervisors developed and approved a police reform and reinvention plan for New York State that focused on mental health resources for the community as well as additional outreach programs. Through all of the years, what has stood the test of time is that the Madison County Sheriff's Office is here to serve the people. Everyone we talked to agreed, the Sheriff's Office is here to help.
The role of the sheriff was basically what it is today, to serve and protect, especially when we had the Loomis gang running loose.
I would tell anybody, you you call the police. That's what they're there for. They're willing to help.
Their sheriff's department is there for them, as well as, protect the officers, protect the inmates, protect the citizens. So there's a lot they can do with the sheriff's department. People always used to say, the sheriff's department not as high standard as troopers or whatever, but they are. They're as good or better in some aspects. And obviously the troopers have their expertise and we have our expertise. But my officers work only in Madison County, and they took care of the people in Madison County.
My guys are great. Don't get me wrong. I have wonderful employees in my corrections division, civil division, and everything. But if somebody treats somebody bad, I get phone calls in my office. So I'm big on that. Treat people the way you would want to be treated, and you're a reflection of this agency when you're working and when you're not working. Also, when you're off duty, people still say, "Oh, that's Bob. He's a cop." Or he's a sheriff's deputy, or he's a trooper. That's something in law enforcement that follows you. It's a profession, but it's also a lifestyle, in my opinion.
Know that the men and women put their life on the line every day. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know, when they get out there at the sheriff's number one job is to make sure they come home to their family at night. The public needs to know they need to be well equipped, well trained. And that you really need to have enough people to do the job right.
You know what? We are compassionate, kind human beings. We are parents. We're children. We're brothers and sisters. We care about you, and we care about the work we do. And in this, national environment with police, I hope people recognize that I work with talented people who could leave this role and they could go do anything successfully because that's their heart and their soul. They choose to keep coming here every day